I call to order the work session of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs on Tuesday, January 17, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mayor Vaticiutis?
Here.
Vice Mayor Lunt?
Here.
Commissioner Carr?
Here.
Commissioner Eisner?
Here.
Commissioner Kulyas?
Here.
Okay. Tonight is a work session format, and generally it's for the purpose of the commission to just basically discuss things among itself. This evening involves the special counsel, Carlton Fields, and the purpose of the meeting is to actually provide them some information for creating a scope of work, which we'll be considering here in the very near future. Even though there's no public comment, the general rule is that at some point in time, the same topic has to be discussed publicly where the public does have an opportunity to speak. So we're going to be doing that next Tuesday night's meeting, where there will be a resolution establishing Carlton Fields as the special counsel and also commissioning their effort. And then, of course, there'll be a scope of work which would be separate from that will be discussed maybe next Tuesday night, but maybe a subsequent meeting soon thereafter. This evening from Carlton Fields, we've got Mr. Adam Schwartz and also Ms. Erin Hoyle, the two attorneys that'll be our primary attorneys, I would suspect, for the investigation, and maybe some others as you listed in your proposal. But we'll be counting on you two for that. You also, for the commission, you have a memorandum in your backup that lays out the format, or at least the flow of the meeting this evening. And so what I'm going to do when I finish here is turn it over to Mr. Schwartz, see if he's got some comments, and then what I'm going to do is go down by seniority, Vice Mayor first, all the way down to Commissioner-elect Kulianis, and then lastly myself, is for any comments. And then once that's done, I'll ask Mr. Schwartz if he's got any comments or questions. And I think for the purpose of making sure Mr. Schwartz has everything that he needs when he walks away, if there's some clarification that he needs when a commissioner's talking, I'd like to invite him to ask a question if he needs some additional information from any of us, so that we don't wind up having to wait until the end and maybe something is lost in that. And then once all that's done, I'll have one more round of the comments for any last comments that the commission might have. The one thing that is really important for everybody to understand, not just the commission, but at some point I think Mr. Schwartz asked who the client was. I can't remember where it was, but I want to make sure it's absolutely clear that the client is the City of Tarpon Springs, the municipal corporation. It's not the city commission, it's the municipal corporation. And there's a subtle aspect to that you'll see in the resolution that'll be coming to you, establishing Carlton Fields as the special counsel, and also, again, commissioning Carlton Fields in their work. That'll be mentioned again there. So I know there was, let me just say that the distinction is it's fair game that in this investigation, and tonight we'll talk about the format, the range, the period of which we'll be looking at. Each commissioner will be interviewed separately, and then tonight is to provide some general observations and insight for Mr. Schwartz's purpose. But each commissioner will be interviewed individually. And then I'm hoping as Carlton Fields goes through their investigation, they may be able to provide us some observations, since the client is actually the municipal corporation, as far as the performance of the commission itself. I think that may be the subtlety, and you'll see that in the resolution for next week. So let me go ahead and get started with, Mr. Schwartz, any comments to get us started?
Mr. Mayor, fellow commissioners, thank you for the invitation. We appreciate your trust and faith in us, and we appreciate being able to participate in the workshop. I think tonight for us, it really becomes a listening experience. We want to listen to what each of you has to say to help us formulate what our scope of work will be, which we will then submit back to you all so you can see it and comment on that, so we can come to some common agreement. But that's really what we're looking to do tonight, is we really want to listen, ask questions if we think of them tonight. We may have further questions after we consider all the comments and digest them, and then come back to the commission with a scope of work, as we had discussed a couple weeks ago, for approval by the commission.
Okay. Thank you. Let's get started. Vice Mayor Lunt, would you like to get us started as far as any comments, things that you just tell Mr. Schwartz what you want Carlton Fields to investigate and what you'd like to see out of this?
Okay, so my overriding concern is obviously the interplay between several parties, both in the city, both in the planning and the planning department, the city manager, our city lawyer, the interplay with Morgan's legal counsel, and the resultant changes in codes that occurred prior to the subject even being exposed in full to the council and to the public. To me, and I read, although it's some time ago, I read all 500 and some odd emails. It just didn't look right, didn't look proper. My concern is that maybe it was unethical or illegal or whatever, but that needs to be quantified and put in a manner that allows us to take a look at it from that perspective. And that's basically what I want. I want to find out exactly what went on, what the interplay was, and what are the ethical or legal ramifications of those, of the interplay.
Commissioner Carr.
Good evening. A couple things that I would like to just call attention to is to get some type of information about the planning department. During this time, I think our planning department was in a lot of transition. So I think it's good to have an understanding of where our planning department was, staffing, who was in our planning department, turnover, and things along those lines. And then secondly, there's another aspect of I would like to understand some more information about is communication between the Board of Commission and the Planning and Zoning Board. And then my understanding is quasi-judicial, the boards are supposed to take information that's presented to them by the applicant or by the experts. And the question is, should the Board of Commission be supplying information to the Planning and Zoning Board, who's then providing a recommendation back to the Board of Commission? And the concern is that there's information that's being provided outside the quasi-judicial hearing by a Board of Commissioner, potentially, who then is getting a recommendation back from the Planning and Zoning Board to the board they're sitting on. So those are a couple of concerns that I have, just for further details. Again, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I just would like some more information on that.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah.
Commissioner Eisner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for coming, Mr. Schwartz. I have a couple of just questions that I would like to see answered down the road. One very serious thing is to know your protocol from start to finish. So I have an idea. This is not something that I've dealt with before, so it's something new. I would like to know more about the compensation package that we provided, that what happens after we reach the maximum that you had requested or that we had agreed upon. I'd like to know if the investigation becomes more in-depth. Do we stop at that point? Do we ask for more money? Are we locked in? So that's something I'm looking for. I also need to know, how do we deal with people or persons that refuse to respond? Because I know that was one of the requests that we spoke about when we were in the interviewing process, that you can't get people to always speak. So I'd like to know what needs to be done there. At what point also do you say enough is enough? We're not looking for a witch hunt. I know that was something said in the past, and that's not what anybody here is looking for. We're pretty much looking for to have, if there was wrongdoing done, bring it to our attention. If there was no wrongdoing done, bring that to our attention. This is not a witch hunt. I would also like to know how often we will be updated, and when you do update us, what that will look like, in what form. I also need to know how you will know who all the players are, whether you're going to need that from individual commissioners, from the city manager, because there are different players involved. There's quite a few in this deal. I'd like to know what your classification is, the difference between abuse, fraud, and wrongdoing in the definition form. My time frame is approximately the time frame we agreed upon, but I don't want to put any sort of stringent time frames in. So if you're seeing a lot in the 2017, I wouldn't restrict you from going into 2016. So I would like to see not put any handcuffs on you. You need to do what you need to do. And if there's anything that you can need from myself, I'm happy to, I think I read most of the emails. I read the 753 or 52 emails. I only read 100 and some odd here, but I had, prepared for 150. So I pretty much know them pretty well. And what we're looking for is neutral eyes. The accusations have been said before that it's political, it's just everything under the sun. You're neutralized, you're not involved. You're not the commission, you're not the past board, you're not the current board, so what you say is what will be. And pretty much that's all I would be looking for. If I could think of something else as time goes on, I'm happy to ask you those questions then. But thank you for showing up.
Commissioner Kulyas.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. I'm interested in you looking into just the interaction between our city attorney at the time and outside attorneys with legal counsel, and the importance of the comprehensive plan and changing land development codes, disclosure of the codes, if there are any intent for the codes when being presented, and just appearance. When we talk about conflicts of interest and the appearance of it all, the comprehensive plan is the constitution in which our land development code applies to, and it's important that we protect it and every process that comes when trying to update it. That's in the best interest of the people of Tarpon Springs and the city's future well-being. So, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner-elect Kulianis.
Good evening, Mr. Schwartz, and I'm sorry.
Karen
Coyle?
Coyle. Coyle, H-O-I-L-E.
Okay. Welcome to Tarpon Springs. Okay, so the questions that I have are rhetorical in nature, so I don't expect you to answer each of these questions. If you choose to answer them, that's great, but if you don't worry about it. I'm just going to rattle off a number of questions. What is the special counsel in context of this engagement? What exactly is it? Please define how you will establish your independence given any skepticism since you're hired by this particular Board of Commissioners to perform this engagement. Will you be, I assume you'll be performing research, giving and backing up any of your findings of legal nature with court opinions and case law. And what other forms of authorities will you be using to back up your findings? Will your findings result in an opinion and/or suggestions? Suggestions for ordinance and/or rule changes, opinions on how the process in the Anclote Harbor project unfolded, and if any violations warrant any form of action. I think it's important that you, again, define yourself, that a special counsel is not a judge, and I assume that's correct. Therefore, what authority will your report be based on? The Board of Commissioners is not directing you to form any specific conclusion or finding based on their individual theories, even though each commissioner might have a particular theory. Obviously, your conclusion will be your own and independent. I think a big question is, what's our objective? Is our objective to kill the Anclote Harbor project? That might be an objective. Or is it to improve our processes and establish better governmental priorities? Using this report, are we going to be using this report as a weapon or as a learning opportunity to create better processes and identify how best to achieve our priorities as a community? Will we be meeting with you on an individual basis? And I assume so, correct? And here's a few questions, legal questions. Are we under privilege if we meet with you? How will the individual members express their individual theories to you without fear of being accused of defamation? If we're not under privilege, or can those theories that each commissioner has be problematic for them or the city? You know, I do forensic accounting, and I do a lot of family law work. And the first thing I do is I sit down with the parties and I ask them, what do they think? What's on your mind? And they come up with all kinds of theories. You know, and some of them have some merit to them. My radar goes up. I hear their theories. Some of them are crazy. You know, they accuse their ex-spouse of being involved in the Kennedy assassination, even though they were born in, 1975. But you hear them, and again, your radar goes up, because some craziness sometimes comes to pass, but oftentimes. But again, how will we express that to you? How will you protect any employees from retaliation if they choose to also speak to you, but also be anonymous? Is your work product or papers subject to public records requests? So again, if we have meetings with you and we say things and you take notes, are those going to be subject to public records requests? How will you establish your scope given the 5 or 6 commissioners' expectations? Each one of them have separate expectations. Obviously, you're going to have your own direction or scope, and how will you do that? Many of the, am I timed out? Or?
No.
Oh, all right. All right. Many of the facts are prima facie or given, right? Some items require legal research rather than forensic or investigative work. I assume that's correct. And I'll give you an example. For example, the question of sitting commissioners and their family and their office members involved in an agency or broker relationship that would inure a financial benefit to them. Does recusal alone exonerate a sitting elected official from any ethical issues where they or their office directly financially benefit from a city project? That's a question that I'd like answered. Furthermore, and here's a different twist on it. Furthermore, are there ethical regulations or rules that would have precluded them from being involved in working with city staff to make a project possible years prior to the time of their recusal? And the reason I think that's relevant is recusal happened at pretty much the end of the process. And if 2017, there's not a vote till 2021, I believe, then was it appropriate to disclose any financial involvement in a project? And here's another curious question, and this kind of relates. Are there any rules or regulations that would preclude earning a commission on a transaction whereby the city is a party to the transaction? Again, does recusal alone exonerate the commissioner from an ethical or conflict issue? Here's some questions regarding investigation regarding St. Claude Harbor process and vote. Please give us your opinion on applicants' attorneys being involved in the drafting of our ordinances to make way for their clients' projects. It's my understanding that it's not uncommon for outside attorneys for the applicants to be involved in writing ordinance changes. I don't think that's uncommon. I think what we have here is, and the question is, was it merely laziness on our representatives' parts to let them do all the heavy lifting on the drafting of favorable wording of an ordinance to make way for a project? Please inform this board and the public of the effects given your legal experience if you were to formulate an opinion that the process was contaminated or abused prior to the vote on St. Claude Harbor to an extent that you would feel a revote could or would be warranted. What kind of legal fight could we expect to ensue as a result of that action? Opinions on how the process in the St. Claude Harbor project unfolded, and if any violations warrant any form of action beyond ordinance or policy changes. Please inform the Board of Commissioners and the public on the limitations and the legal effects of taking any action regarding a project that was passed by elected officials. Could we be in constitutional territory? A public's right to be informed versus the vote of legally elected officials. What costs could be expected from a legal fight of this nature? Costs of the city's legal representation? If we lose, could we be liable for financial award for opportunity or future profit losses to the developer? And possibly of having to pay, obviously, the developer's legal fees in addition to our own. So if we, you're obviously gonna come up with some opinion, suggestions. I think we'll need guidance on that as well as we get to that point, whether or not we, like I think Commissioner Eisner said, how far do we go? And then what are the risks of doing that? Are we covered by the League of Cities if a lawsuit resulted from action taken based on your report? Are there any complications to your engagement given the ruling of the three-judge panel? So there was a ruling of the three-judge panel. How does that complicate any of your findings? Do we have any form of municipal immunity from lost opportunity or profit judgment? So if we were to re-vote on this project, is there municipal immunity given our standing as elected officials? I've got some other comments about process. I don't want to create occupational criteria for those who can run for public office. However, is the following possible? Preclude any sitting, and these are like suggestions of ordinance changes or any policy changes. Preclude any sitting elected official from benefiting financially as a broker or agent for any project or application brought before the city. We even have examples of a sitting commissioner involved as a broker or agent of a project where the city was a party to the transaction. Can we create either a charter amendment changes that could make that improper, if it's not already improper? We want local business people to benefit from local development. I think it's more desirable to have a project built by a local company rather than out-of-towners in the case of hedge funds or private equity groups. But self-dealing is something different. Self-interest dealing needs to be disclosed much earlier in the process. How do we create policies that make this possible? Can a sitting commissioner have a dual capacity? This is a question I have for you also. Can a sitting commissioner have a dual capacity as both an elected official and a broker while simultaneously working on a project for the city and also earning commissions or compensation if the project proceeds? And again, recusal is one thing, but actively working on a project, and we know from the facts that this project had been actively worked on going all the way back to 2017. Creating a safe environment for our staff to work on any project. We need to protect our staff from the pressure or perceived pressure to spend more time on a project given that a commissioner and/or their agents are working directly in City Hall. It's an environment that is untenable. You've got staff, we heard from the emails, staff saying they're working on Sunday, they're exhausted. Are they their own person? Can they when they have family members of elected officials and people with significant influence pushing through a project, and who's protecting the staff? Who do we have? We got management. Should they be protecting the staff? Legal counsel. Should they be protecting the staff? Sitting commissioners. Should they be saying something? These are questions. We need the public to be aware when projects are being worked on prior to the pulling of an application if an inordinate amount of time is required. How much investment does a city make? Thousands of hours of time. How much does a city invest in a project?
Oh, my goodness.
And again, when these influencers are there, it's problematic. So we need a mechanism that makes all projects public from the moment staff puts any significant amount of time. And again, these are things that hopefully you can suggest. And in short, I think we just want good government, and hopefully you can help us get there. Thank you.
Apologize, my phone went off. I normally put it on silent before meetings, but didn't happen this time. Thank you, or Commissioner-elect Kulianis. I'm going to go over some things, but you can see that it's voluminous as far as some of the questions, I guess, and interest of some of the commissioners. Mr. Kulianis is going to be taking office in April, and for about 5 months. If the investigation goes for about 8 months, he'll be a commissioner for about 5 months of that, and so you'll be interviewing him as well as part of this group that we have here. And also, Commissioner-elect Kulianis was on the Planning and Zoning Commission with the one project, actually several of them, that are of question have come through. As far as myself goes, my priorities are coming up with some findings based on what you see from certain topics. Many of them have been discussed here this evening as far as things of questionable activities and actions. I use the word surreptitious because they seem to have been tried to be hid, maybe unintentionally, but in fact that they were, and that caused some problems, and we need some policy as far as how to improve on that to better communicate with the public that these things are actually occurring at City Hall and give them an opportunity to weigh in on them. As a matter of fact, some of these, the Technical Review Committee is a public meeting, and that presents an opportunity of residents to sit in on that if they know that the project is coming. I think another thing is the amount of staff time that gets eaten up with some of these projects. I know the Anclote Harbor was mentioned tonight, and I'm going to say something a little more about that, and that began in 2017. We have another one, the Keystone, I think Keystone Village, or whatever the topic was. It was the 51 homes on the 52 acres.
Keystone.
That was under works for about, as I understand, for about 2 years, and 7 technical review committees
6.
before it actually got to us. So that's an awful lot of investment on the part of the staff in some of these things, and somewhere we need to have a policy as far as how we deal with this sort of thing. Another one is that I'm quite concerned about is non-attorney staff dealing directly with attorneys representing developers and other private parties, and obtaining information, maybe getting some kind of consent from the senior employee that should be coming from our city attorney instead, or at least some discussion in that regard. Also, at the commission meetings, there's something that I'm trying to get the commission more information on. That's the public forum doctrine, as far as how we deal with the public, what can be said, how we interact with them as commissioners. And then, of course, any other issue that you see, and I think we've talked about that you may identify something that you haven't even heard of up here that may be of importance to the city government, and that would be worthwhile letting us know what that is. That's kind of the general way, and I would say that based on my experience, the way you do things is, you've got some general ideas, and you'd like to find some certain examples or cases that you can actually analyze, assess, evaluate. And there's actually 5 that I have that I've been observing over the last couple of years, but I'd like to boil that down to 2. One is the Anclote Harbor Apartments project, and there's reasons for that. And the other one is the street vacation fee. One is quasi-judicial, which was the Anclote Harbor Apartments project, and the other was a legislative act. And those are important because they're the most documented, from emails, public meetings, of which there's videos, where you can see what was actually said from the standpoint of the video and compare that to the written record. And I think you might find some interesting comparisons there of maybe perhaps some things not quite from the written record matching with what is being stated in the video record. So I think that those would be the 2 that, but that's up to you as far as how you would want to handle that. And it's just not the emails. You've heard that mentioned several times. Emails are just basically how this matter came about. None of those have we done any public records request on. The emails just happen to be available, and I just took a look at them, and then the commission took a look at them, and we are here today because of that. So I would hope that there would be some public records requests that you would do to try and obtain additional information, private communications. Our attorneys' emails are not in our system. If there's communications between attorneys, they would not normally be in our system unless they were copied to somebody here in City Hall. So I don't know if that's the case, but that is an example of where I see public records helping in this matter. As far as the time frame goes, the very first meeting of the one project that we talked about, which was Anklote Harbor, was 2017. So assuming that you would like to look at Anklote Harbor, that would be the first meeting, but I think that communications among the staff and the developer really did not increase in activity until somewhat later from that date. And of course, the street vacation fee was within that, and these other three incidents that I'm aware of were within that time frame, certainly past 2017. Also, where I think we should cut it off would be in the spring of 2022, and or even later, up until today, for that matter, if we want to take a look at how we operate since the election. But spring of 2022, and the reason why there was because there were certain motions that what would you call it, the contest, the jockeying, the legal jockeying continued past the approval. There were certain, the writ of certiorari, you met Mr. Delacus earlier, introduced himself to you, was introduced, and then that continued, this legal contest, I guess, if you will. And we were held as a lower tribunal where we were asked to act as judges concerning the motion to stay pending satisfying the conditions that would allow a development order, building permit, construction permit to be issued. And there were certain things that happened during those times that I think were unfair to the residents. So one was, quite frankly, the rules that the commission operated under. And then the first motion to stay, for example, which I still don't understand how that was allowed in any setting. Commissioners weren't even allowed to ask questions. There were 3 presentations by the city, the developer, and the concerned citizens, but commissioners weren't allowed to ask any of those 3 questions, which I'm not sure how you could do that. And then, of course, in the second motion to stay, which this commission went through, we created our own rules of procedure for that. And of course, those were questioned as far as whether we departed from them, from the developer. But of course, the developer didn't point out that there wasn't even coming close to the first motion to stay rules of procedure for that event. So there's a whole lot here. I'm picking on Anklote Harbor, the street vacation fee. By the way, in those emails that the 700 or so, the infamous 700, many of those emails some of those emails are related to the street vacation fee ordinance. And so not all of those 700 are for Anklote Harbor. And so I think that there's plenty of opportunity for you to see how the city government interacted with private individuals, developers, corporations to bring projects forward. And certainly there's a lot of room for improvement in that. As far as, again, my priorities, as far as a deliverable, I'm hoping that we can get some pretty good direction on policies that we should put in place to prevent this from happening again. Where the residents are in any significant issue that's going to have an impact to Tarpon Springs at the ground floor, rather than waiting until certain things were teed up behind the scenes to make it a lot easier for the developer to get what they want and to reduce any risk after the approval of that project somehow unraveling. And so that's my number one priority. As far as the others with regard to, let me just use the word wrongdoing, whether it's an ethics, criminal or civil, and then how that affects, which I know many people are keyed on, the Anclote Harbor Apartment. Obviously, if you see something there, you're going to let us know, but I consider that as a byproduct. You know, I've looked at this in pretty great detail. I'm not an attorney, but I've got a sense of things and what would have to happen. The other part that that I'm hoping that you will look into as far as your interviews are ex parte communications. And I think we take that a little light. And for example, I was the only person, my recollection, during the Anclote Harbor Apartment projects, which divulged ex parte communications during the evidentiary phase of the project. I don't recall any other commissioner divulging any ex parte communication. After the evidentiary phase closed, I didn't have any more ex parte communications because there was no reason to. There was no questions I could ask that should get answers. Yet, the three commissioners that voted on it all declared ex parte communications after the evidentiary phase. It's hard for me to accept, and I would like some confirmation out of your skills, your investigative skills, to find out whether there were actually any ex parte communications that took place during that time frame. So it's all in all, I think, it's all about improving city government. This past election I'm not shy of saying that, put the residents back in the driver's seat. I think there was a clear message to people that, by the residents, that they want to be involved, they want to know what's going on in their community, they've got an idea of what they want their community to look like, and they'd like to have a say in that. So any of these policies that we get coming out of this project, out of this special investigation, are for that purpose. We've already made some policy changes, and we're going to continue doing some policy changes. But where we need your help is to suggest maybe where we don't want to go too far. I think you've heard a couple of commissioners coming up with some questions of some extreme policies, and maybe those may not be realistic or the best interest of being able to work. We don't want to tie our hands so much that we can't get anything done. But on the other hand, we want to prevent what appears to have happened in the past, which a lot of work has happened without the residents knowing about it, a great amount of staff time and money was spent on things that we could have been focused on other things to help improve the city, which we weren't able to. So at this point, what I want to do is, it's still early, it's 7:13, so what I want to do is just go back to the commissioners, and I'd like to have a little more free form here if there's any kind of discussion and interaction that the commissioners, I have some questions for some of the commissioners as far as what they want to do, and maybe some observations on my part. So let me just ask Vice Mayor Lund, is there anything else that you want to talk about or say, or?
I'm not sure that we need to go prior to October 2017. From my initial observations, there was meeting between our staff and Terrapini to discuss the Walmart property prior to the Walmart property having expressed interest, or having prior to Morgan even meeting with Walmart's broker In fact, Walmart property didn't even have an address at that time. So there was so much interplay going on. I want to exactly know how this happened, why this happened, why the city commission at the time wasn't being told that this was happening. I mean, we had staff meet with the broker before their broker even met with Walmart. We had discussions starting with Morgan about impact fees for multifamily based on some development application that was never made. So this was years in advance of them ever doing anything. So to me, anyway, it looks like they were setting the stage, a long stage for. I don't want to use a comment that would be normally made, but it was well in advance of anything that was actually planned, and was approached in a method that was somewhat duplicitous, because it's not, their original thoughts were not what it came to. They had us set up developments, get an address, they had our police department clean the property up. I mean, there's just so much stuff that went on, and you have to go, I read through, the 700 some odd emails or whatever. There's gaps in those emails. Some of them are one-sided. Some of them are continuing conversations that weren't documented, at least not in the emails I saw. I want us to really be able to go through and say, here was the interaction, here were the parties involved. I want to know whether it was unethical, whether it was illegal, or whether it was just bad policy. Because until that is done, we're never really going to know or have a good idea of what we can tell the citizens of this city as far as what went on. I mean, we could get to the point where everything's fine all the way through and it's bad policy or just kind of misdirected policy or whatever, and that's fine. At least we'll know.
Or the lack of policy. The
Or lack of policy. But from my personal observation, after reading through 700 some odd emails, this just doesn't sit right. I've dealt with government agencies and government for a long career, and I've never seen this kind of interplay between a governing body and an applicant. It's just unheard of.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I don't want to interrupt Vice Mayor Lump, but there's also again, we seem to be focused on Anclote Harbor, and there's more to this issue than that, certainly from a general policy perspective. There's a difference of opinion among the staff and some of the commissioners as far as who knew what. You'll have some of the commissioners saying that they don't have any idea what was going on at that time. You have staff saying, oh, yes, they did. So that needs to be documented in this investigation, at least fleshed out as far as observations in that regard. Commissioner Carr.
Yeah, just a couple questions for you, Mayor. I'm trying to understand the special investigations specifically around the Anclote Harbor situation. Am I misunderstanding that? You brought up street vacation, and you brought up some other things, so.
Well, I mean, I'm going to speak candidly. I would hope it goes beyond that. I would hope that what you see in Anclote Harbor was somewhat symptomatic of other things that happened about that time. The street vacation fee was another example where things were done among the staff, and it was presented in it was being done for a different reason at the public hearings. And I'm not talking about during the application process of Anclote Harbor, I'm talking prior to that time. So I'm hoping we can learn of whether that was somewhat just the way business was done in the city government, and we should correct that. If that's inappropriate, I would think it is. That's pretty much my thoughts on this.
Okay,
I'm not sure whether the commissioners had to go beyond Anclote Harbor or whether they want to focus on Anclote Harbor. I don't know.
A couple of things that my understanding with hiring a special counsel was specifically around the Anclote Harbor and how it's handled, not necessarily other ordinances or policies that are in place by the past commission or city attorney or city manager. If there's other things that the board feels inclined to have other research done, I think it's important to look at that. But my understanding is that the board hired the special counsel to handle the Anclote Harbor specifically as a whole and not kind of go off on other aspects.
We can talk about that. I mean, again, candidly, that's not my focus, is to try and improve city government. And I think, again, what happened with Anclote Harbor is symptomatic of what happened with other projects. So,
Listen, I'm here to serve the residents, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I want the best for the city of Tarpon Springs. So
Okay.
I've got no issues with finding other solutions and doing different things, but this special counsel with this bucket of money that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I misunderstood what happened when we approved them. So
look,
I'm not trying to be.
let me just say something. Since my first vote on Anclote Harbor, I've been accused by everybody on the developer side that I'm out to kill that project. And it's getting to the point where, and I'll say this publicly, where I'm being given good reason, because everything is being done to get that project approved except based on its merits. I think it falls short on its merits, but yet there's been a lot of legal wrangling that's gone behind the scene, jockeying, changing of land development code, amendments to tee up the project, and then once we get into it, and when we get into these private conversations, even during the approval process, once it got out of the P&Z board's hands, we had tremendous amount of new information that came to the commission that didn't go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we had things dropped on our desk the day of the meeting, expecting us to accept that into evidence as part of the meeting, and we hadn't even had an opportunity to look at it. So I don't mind focusing on Anclote Harbor. It's a very fruitful process that happened, but I'm just simply trying to spread our interest a little bit to see where maybe some other projects, especially one other one, was similar to that, and that what you saw in Anclote Harbor was not isolated to that. It was somewhat symptomatic to the way we did business here at City Hall. And the policies we need to, I wouldn't want to implement policies just for Anclote Harbor. I would want to implement policies to prevent things like Anclote Harbor and perhaps some other projects that occurred that were similar and acted the same as Anclote Harbor to be put in place to keep that from happening again. So, again, I don't want to be accused here of wanting to focus on Anclote Harbor. But if that's what the commission wants to do, I'm okay with it.
I disagree.
Hang on a second. Let me go ahead and finish.
Yeah, I'm not accusing anybody of anything.
No, I understand that. It's not you.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yeah.
My understanding is that the special counsel was hired to investigate the whole process of the Anclote Harbor situation, not other processes that were in place or happened and things along those lines with city staff or whatever the different things that you have written down. So,
Okay.
If there's a desire to look into other things, I think that's something that the board needs to discuss as a whole, and then find another set of money to allocate time for that. Is it utilizing the new city attorney that's going to be hired here in the near future, or is it the best case to utilize
No.
the
On
firm
that
here?
point, I agree. I think that some of the comments are far beyond what I think even what I was discussing was identifying certain things that are somewhat characteristic that should keep from happening. I think some of the things that were mentioned tonight we could deal with ourselves at a later date, outside the scope of the special counsel. I think that's what you're saying. Is
Yeah,
that,
that's ultimately what I'm
okay.
getting at. Is that I just
Yeah,
want
I agree with you on
I
that
want to
one.
make sure that the special
No,
counsel is
I-
focused on what the board hired him for
Right.
to look into, and not
I
other different
understand.
things. So I'm just bringing up an observation of what I'm seeing.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Excuse me, Vice Mayor Lunt.
I agree with Commissioner Carr. I think we should keep the focus pretty much on what transpired with Anclote Harbor. I can't say whether the commissions or prior commissions, whether what happened to Anclote Harbor or surrounding Anclote Harbor was symptomatic or emblematic or what. I think if we get a detailed look at what happened, then it's maybe our decision to say, well, we need to look at other things that happened within that similar time frame. But I think initially our scope, we can't make it too broad.
No,
mean,
I agree.
I think we need to focus on that, and if it looks like it might have been symptomatic, then maybe we look into other things later on. But at this particular point, I think we need to focus on Anclote because it's the biggest going concern thing that we have right now.
Okay. Commissioner Eisner, what are your thoughts? You seem to be a little darker red, so evidently your blood's boiling over there.
No, I'm good. Listen, what I would say is there were a lot of questions, and I don't think there's been a stone not, overturned here. We have a lot of questions, but I do agree that we have to kind of keep it focused. The clarification I'd like to explain to Mr. Schwartz is these are parameters. And if you tend to see you're finding facts that could lead outside the parameters, so do it. But nobody's asking you to go back to the 1900s on that. Nobody's asking you to readdress our land development code verbatim. We are going to have an attorney to do that. I heard a lot of different questions. It all should be corresponding to what might have happened, possibly illegal or not. And I also did notice that some of the things, as commissioners were asking you questions, you were writing them down. Certain things you were not writing down because those are gimmies that normally would come with your presentation, and there's no need for you to take notes on that. So I appreciate that. There are certain things that have been said that we could also handle on our own. So I don't want you to go down every rabbit hole. We'll blow your budget within the first week. So I know you know that. What I was curious is, are we entitled to retribution for staff wasted time, which is what I heard a question asked, and I think that's pretty important. And not so much but on the projects where developers monopolized our time. And you will see that in the emails that there were comments made like, we've been waiting for this X amount of time. I demand that, we should have this by Wednesday. Who would say that to staff that doesn't work for them? So those are the kind of things when I heard people saying that people working Sundays, they were under stress, they can't handle it. All true. But there's no place for that to be putting pressure on. Another thing is what I'd like you to really key in on, is it illegal to offer financial retribution to speed a project along? Because that's in one of the emails. I don't know. That's not my purview. Some of the speech that we had here about quasi-judicial, and as the mayor said, he was the only one that put any onus into the findings of fact. The criteria that was presented, because I was here for every meeting, was all generalizations. Is that how I know our attorney could describe how quasi-judicial is, but could it be illegal to just say things like, yeah, the height fits the other heights in the area? Because that was one of the comments said. There are no other heights in that area that correspond to this project. So that's not true. So that's saying things incorrectly. Is that an issue? And there were many like that. So you also, I do believe on a vote as crucial as this, with that much money, every commissioner should have explained in findings of fact how they could justify their decision according to the criteria that was presented, which was not done. It was, I don't even know how to describe it. It was piecemeal. when you go to read these emails, will you have somebody there with you that can quickly walk you through, oh, that's so-and-so, this is so-and-so, he belongs to that one? Because for you to figure it out or to ask questions is just going to be a time killer. So there is easily that can be handled. All the questions are really good questions, but some of them don't pertain to this matter. So you have to make some discretionary decisions on not to get caught going down into rabbit holes, but that's what I think your expertise is in, and I appreciate that. Everybody has their wish list of what happened, and but I would like you to zero in on, like I said earlier, what was possibly fraud, what was illegal, what was legal.
You're talking about Anclote Harbor by itself? or-
Yes, yes. But honestly, if you're going to find something in the course, I would like you to make it make us aware of it, so that if we do have to spend for it in addition on another issue, I'm looking for transparency. I ran on transparency, I want transparency, and I believe everybody up here would like that too. We didn't see that transparency in the prior situation, and that is probably the biggest key to what things were being done in what they call a haymaker. So I think that pretty much
Okay.
covers my
Let me go,
end of it.
Commissioner Kulyas.
Yes, I did want to follow up with what Commissioner-elect Kulianis said. I am interested to see, when everything's researched, is there enough evidence for a recall or a revote for consideration of that project? I would like this special counsel to try to focus on the Anclote Harbor situation, and I think that, once they start researching, they'll be able to see the land development codes and, how the web can go out from there, and how other legal counsel from outside of our city was looking for the well-being of land development codes, but yet forgot to look over certain codes that should have been addressed at that time. Hence the latter issue with the fire truck and the fees going up.
Street vacation fee.
Well, that and the fire truck, remember, a certain amount, the increased value for,
That fee for the fire trucks. The ladder.
do you remember that?
Oh, you mean to
Harbor
pay extra
Tower?
money to get the study done more quickly?
For the fire truck ladder extension and how the value
Oh, that
per-
was,
It's an impact fee. I think that the study, you can't increase over a certain amount, but that was left out.
Yes, that was overlooked. And just the comprehensive plan, like I said, it's the Constitution in which our land development code is used for. At what point during the transition of the elected officials on this board should or shouldn't have our city attorney disclosed the overall interaction of this application, and just protecting the city. This is a unique and special situation. That property in question has been a controversial topic for almost 15 years now, if not more. So there was a lot of, whatever jockeying or positioning to create some leverage for that was, its intent was already thought out for years. So just your processes and looking over it all, and I'll have, when we have our 101, I'll be able to comment more towards what I believed I've learned in the ethics training and how it can be applied to this unique and special situation. Thank you.
all right, thanks. Commissioner Kulyas, I'm smiling because I got a public records request today from the Morgan Group's attorneys. I got one on the 16th. None of you guys have gotten anything, and I'm trying to keep a lid on things, and you guys are pushing hard. So I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of you. So you need to speak your mind, and that's what you're doing. So I'm very happy about that. Commissioner-elect Kulianis.
stand up and grandstand. You know, I hear what you guys are saying, and I don't know if.
What do you mean by you guys?
The you group. So and I'm not sure if, I thought we were like free-flowing conversation here, so I can just say.
Go ahead.
I can say you guys.
Go ahead.
So, you know, you were talking about rabbit holes and stuff like that. I hope that some of the things I said you weren't taking as rabbit holes. Because I think when you get into this, you're going to see that this is a case of lack of transparency, right? The community didn't know about something that had been worked on for quite a bit of time. And it is a case, I believe, you can do your research and see otherwise, of influence, okay? And I think it's critical that as you're going through this process, that where you have recommendations for us on policy, ordinance, charter changes, I'm not asking you to draft all those and spend the time to do that, but in your recommendations, and I'm sure that your report's going to have a whole list of recommendations, that as you come across those things that can fundamentally be done that can prevent this from happening in the future, okay? And I'm not even saying that any of this profiteering is illegal at all. I don't, and I probably don't even think it is. I just think it's problematic, and I think that we need to address that. You know, my brother Tom worked at the Environmental Protection Commission, and I think it was Commissioner Platt, I guess, who had they had issues, similar issues, where developers were working, you know, on the side and getting stuff, and the citizens didn't know about projects till much later in the process. And so they had a system where they had to register, that these people had to register as lobbyists do, and record all their meetings in City Hall. And then those records were public record, so that the public, anyone, could have access to them and find out who's at City Hall, what are they talking about, what's going on. So even those basic things, and I know we could do those and we don't need Carlton Fields, but as they're going through this, they're going to see those things, because Anclote Harbor, I don't care if they go off of Anclote Harbor's fine, because I think it's a perfect example of this problem, right? We know that we had years of no transparency. We know we had commissioners and agents involved financially in the projects. We know those things were going on. Again, illegal, I have no idea. Problematic, I think we can all agree they're problematic. And again, how do we prevent this stuff from happening in the future so we get good government in Tarpon Springs? And we know that projects are being passed and worked on their merits and not based on influence and getting special treatment because of that influence.
Commissioner Eisner.
So now that you heard about our Santa's wish list, one of the questions I asked you earlier was, how often, excuse me, will we be updated? And from there, I think when we get an update, we could then fine tune and choose which way we're going to go. So that, I think, is a very important decision that you have to give us once you get through the first couple of bites of this. So that's...
Let me have I'd like to make a couple more comments.
Sure. Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
I mean,
That was,
Okay.
no, you know, because I just hear, it's like, it's such a big wish list, you know, so that I just want to make sure that we get, you know, to the bottom of what we really need.
Well, I mean, that's a very good point, and, you know, that's Mr. Schwartz and Ms. Hoyle, that's going to be this isn't the first time they've gone through this, so I'm sure they're going to boil down to what they're hearing, and I'm sure they've heard a lot of the sort of things that we've said by other commissions and other governmental agencies talking the same way. But what I wanted to say was the only concern I have was focusing in on one project, is that I don't want there later to be, it said that this was a one-time project. It only happened on that project, didn't happen any other time, and we don't expect it. I don't believe that's true. I believe it's happened in other cases, and I think that's the way it was at City Hall. So that's what I'm trying to flesh out by expanding this to at least one other.
Agree.
Which was quasi-judicial, was Anclote Harbor. The street vacation fee was a legislative action. It involved the same people, the same staff, the same attorneys, but it was a different sort of approach. But in the one case, it was done for one project that saved the developer $90,000. If the interest was to forego that money, there was another way of doing it without changing the ordinance, but I don't know why it didn't get pursued that way. Maybe the optics weren't good and the commission didn't want to do it, if the commission knew about it. In the other case, it was a lot of teeing up, and I use the word legal wrangling. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's what you hire good attorneys for. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that when you have high-powered attorneys talking to mid-level managers, getting ideas of how to approach things, I think that's a problem. Without our city attorney knowing about it, for example, I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
And that's the quasi-judicial part. The legislative is a different animal, and that's the only reason I wanted to at least look at two to kind of say it just wasn't the one case. It was a second one.
I think my theory about the other case is that this change to the vacation rules were made under the auspice of helping out the housing authority, but because they're obviously capable of really long-term planning, it was done for other reasons like, oh, I don't know, maybe vacating Hayes Road without any cost to the project, or something along those lines. There's other stuff going on here. I just think we need to know about one to discover the other. And then we need to decide whether it's a policy decision to chase those other rabbits, or whether it's worth it from a legal standpoint.
Okay. That's all each of us are gonna be interviewed individually by Carlton Fields. I'm hoping you're telling me not talk about that other one, because I want to shed the similarities on that one as the same as what we had with the Anclote Harbor one. Mm-hmm. If that's okay with the commission. Is there anything else? Go ahead, Commissioner Eisner.
I know there was a statement made about a confusion whether there was ex parte communication, and that was clearly in one of the emails. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Mr. Schwartz, I'm going to jump in here, and I know you're writing. I don't want to interrupt your writing. And would you like to offer some comments, or would you like to take a break and collect your thoughts, or how would you like to do this?
No, I think we can continue. I wanted to thank the commissioners and Commissioner-elect for all their comments. It's been really helpful. I guess my sort of initial reaction is there is a lot out there. And we probably are not going to be all things to all people on the commission. It's our intention to put together a comprehensive scope of work that we think we can do within the budget that we've told you that we're going to adhere to. And so that's our intent. We are pretty good at not going down rabbit holes. I'm not saying we're perfect, but we're pretty good at it. So I think we have a pretty good idea as to what we're focused on. we certainly want to get some answers to the citizens of Tarpon. That's our main goal. And we think we're going to be able to do that. So what we would propose to do is let us go back, get our thoughts together, incorporate the comments that we have to come up with what we think is a workable scope of work. We would get that back to the commissioners for any further comments. I think that's the best way to proceed from here on in, and then we would start the process, and the process would be, among other things, getting documents and starting to talk to each of you. Commissioner Eisner, you had commented on sort of who the players are, and that would be really helpful for us to have. I don't know the best way to do that, but if there's a way to shortcut it, it would save us a lot of time, you a lot of money to do that. So
I have it written.
well, if you have it tonight, we'll take it. So, we want to get started as soon as possible. That will actually probably help us with our scope of work also. So, Mr. Mayor, that's sort of what I would propose to do at this point.
Okay. As far as a time frame for the scope of work, and the reason why I'm asking, we've got the resolution. There's a draft resolution that I think is going to require a little bit of rework from what I'm hearing tonight to kind of focus in just a bit more on the Anclote Harbor project and kind of dispense with some of these other things. That's the sense I get that the commission wants to do. And we're planning on bringing that back Tuesday night on the 24th for consideration and approval by the commission. And that would be the formally establishing you as the special counsel, and also commissioning your work, and also providing you the authority you need to act on our behalf. That's the resolution. And if you could provide us a draft scope of work that doesn't necessarily have to be approved that night, but we can certainly talk about it. And then there may be some aspects that there would be general agreement that I don't know if that would be helpful for at least for you to get started on. I know we're talking about still about an 8-month period, roughly, plus or minus, as far as the work goes. So do you think that you would have a draft by Tuesday, based on what you're hearing this evening?
I do. We'll get you a draft by Tuesday.
Okay.
Okay.
It actually, if you could do it by Monday, that would be better in order to include it in the backup.
Okay, you're
that
pushing
the-
the
that the
schedule a little bit,
residents,
Mayor, but we'll get it to you by
Okay.
Monday.
Yeah, it's important for the residents to see that. That's the night that they're going to be able to comment on this, and that's one of the problems we've had in the past is getting them information soon enough, so.
No, it is. I mean, certainly Monday is very reasonable. We'll get
Okay.
that to you by
All
Monday.
right.
That's absolutely the case.
All right, now, is there anything that you heard that I want to say that you might have an issue with? I mean, you're here, and I wouldn't be shy about it. I would, I would tell them I'd have an issue with this, but I mean, I'm offering that to you as well, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, part of, as I mentioned earlier, part of that really for us today was to listen. We want to listen to everybody's wish list and put it together, put a scope of work together that we think is workable. So everyone's not going to get what they wish for, but we're going to do the best we can for the citizens of Tarpon is what I would say within the, what's workable within the budget. I mean, if we had an unlimited budget, we could look into some of these things all day, but we're all limited by that, and we want to do the best job that we can within that budget.
I think it's going to be important that whatever your final product is, report, information, there shouldn't be any questions concerning it. In other words, unanswered questions that are just hanging there. And that's the concern I get is and you and I had a brief conversation about that, of approaching the amount of the fee that we agreed to, $160,000, and for whatever reason, you identify something that may be extremely pertinent to this, but you're not able to do that within that cost that we had agreed to. And I suggested to Mr. Schwartz, I invited him to come back, and we should talk about that rather than just finishing it up for $160,000 and leaving it with some unanswered questions. On the other hand, there may be some things there that you heard this evening, once you kind of look at it, there may not be anything there. And it would be a waste of your time to be pursuing something or trying to actually create something on something that's not there too. And I think if that's the case, I think it would be incumbent on your part to let us know, and I'm sure it would kind of strike the nerve of whatever commission offered that at the time, and maybe he would have some additional questions for you offline rather than at a meeting as far as why that may not be fruitful to go down that path any further.
Yes, to
Okay.
both those points.
All right.
I guess the other thing that I would add is, Commissioner Eisner, you asked about sort of timing as to updates. I don't know when that's going to be. I guess I would say certainly if there's something significant that comes up. I want to think about it too. Should we do it on a sort of a scheduled basis? We can talk about that too. One thing I will say though is, if we do find something significant and we think it is still going on, right? If there's a question of, is this process or procedure still going on? And we think that is problematic, we'll identify it immediately. So we're not going to wait until the end of this 8 months later to say, hey, this has been going on, you should have fixed this before. We'll at least bring it to the attention of the commissioners so that you all can deal with it.
Mr. Schwartz, I think Commissioner Eisner asked the question. I think I want to get the answer to that, which I think you can answer. Conversations, and I think Commissioner-elect Kulianis brought this up. Conversations are, in this particular setting that we've got you as a special counsel, are attorney-client privilege communications, conversations. Is that correct?
Do you mean the one-on-ones?
One-on-one.
The one-on-ones will be privileged. There obviously is the intersection of the public records law that we're very conscious of.
Anything written one-on-one or as a group would be considered public record.
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
So our interviews that you're going to have would be one-on-one interviews would be privileged.
And there'll be our notes too. There'll be our attorney notes.
Okay. Your notes would be privileged as well. Okay. But anything that we bring to you in writing is not privileged. Anything that we hand you in writing would not be considered attorney-client.
That's correct. That's correct. We'll do some additional research on the public records law for the attorney-client privilege issue for the interviews, but those will be our notes.
Okay.
And which are our notes. That's our work product. So we would claim that privilege, and of course, whatever goes in the final reports is obviously public.
Mayor,
You're looking my way.
can I do a follow-up on that one? Yeah, I want a follow-up question on what you were
Go
just
ahead.
talking about. So for further clarification, since you're hired by the city itself, is it privileged for city staff in the conversations as well too, not just the commissioners that are speaking with you? I guess that would be an additional question that would be good to know as well too.
Yeah, so I think as part of our scope of work, we'll be able to define that as to exactly who the privilege covers.
Thanks.
Way to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
it's a good point, though.
Any other questions that we might have for Mr. Schwartz or Ms. Hoyle?
Yeah, I have one additional question. I don't believe that.
Go ahead.
One of the key personnel in this, especially in the early times, is no longer one of our employees. Now, she does hold certain professional status. Because she's not a city employee, if we find out that this was unethical or against Florida Sunshine rules or whatever, is there any thing that can come back on her in her current position? She works for another city right now in the same or a similar kind of position.
I mean, questions, it's kind of hard to answer in the abstract. I don't know. I guess we need to know a little bit more who the person was, what the action may or may not have been. Was it by omission, commission?
She's the original planner involved with this for the first couple of years.
Yeah.
Maybe if you could, you're not interested in let me just keep it simple. You're not interested in hurting her. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not interested in her. I wouldn't say that. That's not
Okay.
true. I think if she was unethical about this, I think she should be taken to task for it.
Okay. I just want some clarification on that, because there's, along those lines, we've got some fairly I don't want to call, they're senior, but they're not department head, they're not charter official individuals that were involved in conversations with the outside attorney, that, you know, one of them, or the developer. And I think from my perspective, it's unfair, and no matter how it happened, to have put that person in that position. So if something comes out that maybe something isn't right in that regard, I would hope, that, and I'm not asking for any kind of decision, I would hope that there would be some consideration on this commission that it wasn't entirely that person's problem, given that that person may be worrying about her job, and that's, or
Yeah, I'm
that
not on
person's
a
job.
headhunt here.
Okay.
I just, you know, it's,
But we'll cross that bridge when if we get to it,
yeah,
I guess. Okay.
let's do that.
How's
You'll
that?
find when you start getting into this, that the players involved, it'll fall into place for you, I think, pretty rapidly.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kulyas.
I just want to clarify with this board, with the scope of work. I know we were talking about the special counsels focusing on Ankle Harbors, and Mayor, you brought up the other issue that's intertwined with the vacation fee. So I do want to support the mayor in having the vacation fee looked into as well, and hoping if we can get that, you know, support from one more commissioner, that could be included in the scope of work to come back Tuesday. Thank you.
Is it okay to include the street vacation fee? I think that's.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Okay. Commissioner Kulianis, you're sitting over there quietly.
No, I think I've spoken up. I'm looking forward to being involved in the process.
Could you speak into the microphone? I can't hear you. I'm hard of hearing anyway, and it makes it particularly difficult there.
No, I want to thank you, and I'm looking forward to participating in our one-on-one and helping make our city better. So, thank you.
Good, thank you, Commissioner-elect.
Mr. Schwartz, in the resolution, you're going to be given your point of contacts. The Paul Smith, who's the acting city manager this evening, will be your point of contact for interviews with city staff.
Okay.
And also scheduling future commission meetings should you feel that that's going to be the case. I'm saying this for the purpose of the commission. Ms. Jacobs is our public records custodian. She can get you anything you want. If she doesn't have it in hand, she could go to the department that needs it. And then Ms. Lewis, I know you've already spoken to Ms. Lewis about the billing and invoicing approach to take on that, which she would be your point of contact on that. But that'll all be in the resolution, and that'll be for next Tuesday night. Does any commissioner feel that Mr. Schwartz or Ms. Hoyle needs to be here for that?
For which?
For the resolution next Tuesday night?
No.
No? Does that help?
Okay, yes, it does. Yeah, thank you very much, that helps.
Okay. Is there any last words from you?
I don't think so. Just thank everybody for your time and your comments. You know, and we're going to do the best job that we can for the citizens of Tarpon.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you.
Ms. Hoyle, thank you very much. Let's go to, that ends that agenda item. And again, for the public, what you heard tonight is going to be fair game for next Tuesday night to be able to get up and make your comments and weigh in on this. Nothing is cast in stone. If you feel that there's something else that needs to be looked at, please let us know. I know that this commission is fairly receptive to what the residents want, and there would be some consideration given to that. Let me go to board and staff comments. Chief Young.
No comment, sir.
Attorney's not there. Mr. Smith, anything?
Mayor, just as procedure, do you want to have the special counsel here in case there's questions on that scope of services, if that's going to indeed be in the same meeting?
No, I don't think so. I think that, I'm not sure, I'm just going to indulge the procedure here a little bit. You're not envisioning us to approve the final that night. You're just going to provide us a draft, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I don't think so. We can have a conversation and pick up with you after that.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay, by the way, there were a lot of things said tonight. The good news is it's on video. So next week you can actually watch live on what the comments are, and you'll get a sense of where we're going on the scope of work in that regard too.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense. We'll certainly do that. Thank
Okay.
you.
I have
Ms.
no
Jacobs,
comments. Thank
anything?
you.
Okay, let's go to the commissioners. Vice Mayor Lunt.
I just have a couple of broad comments for our citizens and residents of Tarpon Springs. There was, during this process, an alarming lack of transparency between what was going on and what was being told to the city commission at large and what was being told to the citizens, to the public. Our intent here, I don't think overall, is to really go on a headhunt. What we want to bring is transparency to something that was obfuscated for so long. And, you know, sort of let the chips fall where they may, but you need to know that we're doing this not because we're all upset with the previous council on a personal basis. We're doing this because the people of Tarpon Springs need answers, they need transparency in the government, and they need to know that we're standing up for them. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Carr. Commissioner Eisner.
I agree with what Vice Mayor just said. In addition, I also ran on transparency. I detest lying, and if that's what we find, so be it. If we find that things were done on the up and up, I will accept that as well. I believe that the residents should have a fair shot at having a representation of good people that are there to better their life and not to better our lives. That's a private thing. So I did see enough that actually made me want to run for office. This wasn't a choice of mine on the onset. I did this as a give back to the residents. I love Tarpon Springs, and I will die trying to save it.
Commissioner Kulyas.
I can't follow up with that. That was awesome. No comment.
I can give you a sword. You can fall on the sword if you'd like. Commissioner-elect Kulianis, your first chance.
Yeah. I'm not promising to die, but
Hey, it's a club we're all going to join sooner or later.
yeah. Well, I want to thank the mayor and commissioners for allowing me to be part of this tonight, and I appreciate the respect you guys show me. And also Jacob, Commissioner Carr, has always been gracious to me. And, you know, I'm kind of stepping in his sphere, even because he's still here, and then here I am coming up as the new kid, even though I'm like 30 years older than you. But anyways, I want to thank you for always being gracious to me. So, and you know, I've said this out in the public. I don't really want anybody going off in handcuffs. I don't want anybody disbarred. I don't want anybody having ethical problems that causes them, you know, to hurt them. I just think the process is flawed. I think that we need to become a better government and to do things that help us. And that's why I want you to, as you're going through your process, is helping us to make our government better going forward. And again, I don't want retribution. I don't want your report to be some kind of a weapon. I want it to be helpful to making our city better. So, thank you.
I don't think anybody expected this when they took office, and I certainly didn't expect it. And I want to make sure the residents know, and I'm speaking for myself, probably for the other commissioners too. I don't think anybody relishes the situation we're in right now. You know, we didn't bring it here. We didn't force Anclote Harbor. We didn't force the Morgan Group to come here. People were involved, knew exactly what they were going to be getting into based on the Walmart project. So, you know, I'm not sure I understand the kind of the rationale on some of the folks involved in this matter as far as the emotion that would bring out in the public concerning this project. And I recognize the former commission, the individuals had to deal with that. And maybe if they knew what was going on behind the scenes, if they did know already, maybe the outcome would have been different. I don't know. All I know is we're dealing with what we were dealt, and we just have to follow through. And what I always keep in mind is, if for those of you who've been involved in the strategic plan, that one graphic that was done of the gentleman standing there pointing to the future of Tarpon Springs and working on how to make it better. You know, I'm going to be here for 2 years and 4 months longer, and a lot of these things that we're dealing with right now are going to outlive me as mayor. I had 1 term as commissioner and 1 term as mayor, and so it's just, that's how slow the wheels of government work these days, whereas 25 years ago things went a lot faster. Last 25 years ago, we did the dredging in 3 years. I'm being told now we're working on our 7th or 8th year of trying to get the dredging done. My focus is not on this dredging. My focus is on purchasing or finding a disposal pond so we can tee up, get ready for the next dredge to keep our channel open in the future, not just this next time that we're doing right now. So there's a lot of things that are on the table that we need to get going to. I don't think any commissioner mentioned this tonight, but the one real value of the special counsel is to take this matter out of our hands. You know, put it in their hands. Hopefully not hear too much about this publicly, or at least from the standpoint of agenda items that we'll be dealing with. They'll be looking at this for 8 months, and 8 months are going to come back and tell us whether what needs to be done, what their findings were, where the policy changes need to be made in order to keep things from happening again. I think once that happens, the city is going to be much better off, and I'm hoping over this next 8 months we'll be able to focus on these things that are more important to the residents. One in particular, fixing the intersection of Spring Boulevard and MLK before the bridge gets started next December. I mean, we'll be having a workshop January 31st on nothing but projects. And Mr. Smith's going to be there. He's going to be a big part of that. And we hope to demonstrate to the residents that we recognize what these timetables are, and we need to work our best to make sure that they are done so we don't wind up causing problems here in the city. So again, I don't relish being here. I didn't envision it when I was becoming when I wanted to be mayor, but I'm here and I'm dealing with it, and I'm very proud of this commission, and quite frankly, if their issue is Hank-Claude Harbor and they want to get to the bottom of it, they've got every right to do that, and they're speaking their minds. So that's what the residents need to hear, exactly what's on the commission's mind, not being mamby-pamby and working around it, but being straight to the point. So I congratulate them, and unless there's something else, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 8:07. Good night, everybody, and thank you.